Hello and welcome to another segment of Interviews That Matter. I'm your host Raj Mehta. Friends, in this segment, we bring those guests who influence our lives. This includes elected officials, policymakers, heads of major organizations, and other dignitaries. It is my sincere hope that the knowledge brought in by these guests will help our community. Today we have such guest. She is an assemblywoman for Assembly District 22. Her name is Mikhail Solagis. Let's meet Mikhail. Mikhail, thank you so much for coming here today. Appreciate your time today.
The pleasure is all mine. Thank you for this opportunity.
Assemblywoman, first of all, congratulations on a good victory, or sweet victory rather. Last November, and the second term, you'll be going into a second term as an Assemblywoman.
Yes, we're very excited. 2015, 2016 will be a great year in the legislature. So I thank all my constituents for being, confident in the work that I'm doing, and I'm very excited and also very honored to talk about my next term with you.
Great, appreciate it. So first, let's begin with your background.
Yes.
Tell us about yourself, everything.
Well, once again, my name is Assemblywoman Mikhail Solagis. I'm a lifelong resident of Long Island. I was born and raised in Elmont, where I still reside with my husband, Nick. Mm-hmm. I went to school at H. Frank Carey High School in Franklin Square, and my husband was born and raised in Valley Stream. Mm-hmm. So that's my district: Elmont, Valley Stream, Franklin Square, Floral Park, and North Woodmere. Okay. And it's a very diverse district, but I love it. Lived there all my life. Okay. And to have the opportunity to really give back to the community is something that every day when I wake up, I feel blessed because I have the opportunity to really advocate not only on a local level, but in the state of New York, where it's very important that we have a loud voice here on Long Island. Mm-hmm. And so my background really started, just going to college at Hofstra University. Okay. The first day I applied for an internship at the library. They saw my enthusiasm when I went there, and so they actually hired me soon after as a supervisor of access services, where I worked there for about a decade, helping students, empowering students, and, bringing, that library through the new millennial. I also helped on a lot of campaigns. I really enjoyed being able to, help individuals get into elected office. So, I used to be that person that would put up campaign signs or knock on your door saying, vote for, candidate, XYZ. And, I did a lot of that great work. And so, being involved in campaigns, I really saw how to, win an election. And then, I transitioned to the aspect of also volunteering at a legislative office and learning how to help people governmentally, being able to solve their problems and really be a voice for constituents. And so, having that legislative and, political background, when in 2012, when they redrew all the lines in the state Senate and also the state Assembly, they created a new district, the 22nd Assembly District, which combined all the communities together. And so I ran for it. I ran because, we need a loud voice, that community, for millennials, for seniors, and for families. And so I ran at the age of 27.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm one of the youngest in the assembly, and my community believed in me, and I won.
Great, congratulations again.
Yes, thank you.
So you do have this, the helping people thing in your heart.
Yes.
Number one. And I believe that you do have a family background also.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
And so
family background.
My father instilled in us the mantra that public service is very important.
Okay.
He was actually a NYPD officer. He's retired now. Okay. And he also served in the military, the Army Reserve. Okay. So he was constantly giving back, working long hours, but always giving back to the community. And as a young person, I saw that. My family saw that. So naturally, when we had an opportunity, legislator Carrie Solagis and I, to really give back to the community, we did so. And so, I urge all young people, and not young people, I urge everyone to get involved and become, a citizen of their community. Right. Be involved in a civic, clean up a corridor, whatever you need to do, just get involved. And so that's really been a part of my family, and, I'm happy that I'm doing it, especially at a young age.
Right, yeah, that's good. Who was your mentor? Who do you think your mentor was? Your father?
Oh, my father, definitely my mother as well.
Oh, your mother as well?
She stayed home with us. She was a homemaker. Okay. And she really helped us and guided us. It's always important to have that voice there when, when you're after school, you're wondering, well, where am I going to do now? I was able to go home and have my mother help me. And she's a very strong influence in my life. And so I have many mentors, which includes also teachers within H. Frank Carey High School and Dutch Broadway in Almont. That I still talk to today, that guide me. I also have a lot of spiritual leaders as well within my community that guide me. So
good, yeah. I think like you do have to really be inspired by somebody who really you can look for, and then you say, okay, well, I want to do this, that kind of thing, right? I mean, obviously,
exactly.
You saw your parents, and your parents are always giving out, and that's what you saw a whole life, and therefore you and Carey, your legislative brother,
yes.
right? So they both grew up in the same environment.
Exactly, and it's so important that we establish this environment for everybody. So I'm constantly working and making sure that people are involved, and so I always like volunteers at my office. So if you know anyone who's willing to volunteer, or any students looking for internships, please come aboard. They can call me at 516-599-2972. Once again, 516-599-2972. And they can get an opportunity to volunteer, because in my office we host so many programs, from foreclosure initiatives, so we can help homeowners stay in their home, all the way to Women of Distinction Luncheon, where last year we had about 300 women in a room celebrating during Women's History Month, why women are so great. So but we were in a room, and we had volunteers. We had over 40 volunteers helping out. We had like National Night Out as well, which is a night in which the police and law enforcement comes into the community, and we celebrate, and we get to know each other, and you get to know your neighbors. We had over 500 people attend. Excuse me, 1,000 people attend. It was quite a great attendance, and we had over 100 volunteers. And so there's always an opportunity to give back in your community, especially within the 22nd Assembly District.
Very good, very good. So I will definitely put the phone number on the bottom of the screen, so people can definitely call you on. Mostly, people are looking for summer internship work, and we do need that help.
Exactly.
Kind of help, right? Yeah. So tell us something about your first term in the assembly. Tell us, as a newcomer, 27-year-old woman. I mean, you go in and you see everybody who are like 50s, and whatever.
At first,
what was your feeling?
At first, I was the thought of it was a little overwhelming, going there and first appearing in the chamber, seeing 149 other members, clamoring for their needs for their district.
Right.
New York is very large.
Right.
I learned that being in the assembly. From Buffalo all the way to Montauk, there are a lot of needs.
Right.
But once I sat down in that seat, it all melted away, because my colleagues were so supportive. They were there to help me, to answer my questions. I also entered in with a class of about 15 other members. So we're a large class. So there was also a support system there to help me. And so being in the assembly really was a nurturing environment. I had the support needed to really advocate. I always had my colleagues say, don't be nervous, speak from the heart, and just work hard. Naturally, things that, in every industry you work in, if you do that, you will succeed. And so in my first term, I was able to do all that and more. I've passed laws, which on average in Albany, it takes 7 years to pass a law. Yeah. And so I did, pass about 1 or 2 laws in my first year, which is excellent for a freshman.
Right.
I've gotten capital funds and monies back to the district, which is very important, and one very important issue that happened with the district. And I also was able to advocate for economic development in my community. There's large projects that are being discussed that not only will change the face of my community, of our community, the 22nd Assembly District, but will change the face of Long Island. So I was able to be one of the voices to really get smart economic development and push for smart economic development in the area. And so, to have an opportunity like that is amazing. And it's historical, because not many people are elected to the New York State Assembly. And to be able to really advocate for their community, really, it's a dream. And I appreciate it every day.
Just tell us, let's say, for example, when you go there, right, in an assembly, and you got 190 members, and, everybody has different, as you said, everybody has different interest. Buffalo has a different interest than Long Island.
Exactly.
And 22nd, So let's say you get an idea, or you want to do something for the district. How do you move forward? The process. I'm talking about the process.
Oh, the process.
Yeah,
So,
because I know, it's interesting,
well, let me start from the beginning.
Right.
The roles of an assembly member.
Okay, good.
There's three important things that an assembly
Okay.
member does.
Okay.
It's quite a few stuff, but these are the three main roles.
Okay.
The first is passing legislation.
Right. Okay.
So, there's laws. There's laws like don't text and drive, don't drink and drive. These are state laws that we vote on. So recently we passed a lot of legislation with banning texting and driving. And so we work on legislation. I work on child care legislation. I work on a lot of legislation.
Okay.
And so, voting on legislation, voting yes, nay, or abstaining from legislation is one of my roles.
Okay.
The second role as assembly member is working on the $157 billion budget.
Oh, okay.
That's a large budget for a state. And so I work to make sure that Long Island and the 22nd Assembly District gets their fair share of that $157 billion. And it's quite a task because it starts from all the way from November and it ends on March 31st.
Okay.
And so it's important that we, as a community and as assembly member, I stay on and make sure that, we get money for infrastructure, for transportation, and most importantly for education.
Right.
Which, in Long Island, I think we're not getting our fair share. Property taxes are high, we pay a lot, and if the state paid their fair share of state aid, we wouldn't have to pay those property taxes. So, getting our fair share of state aid is so important when we talk about the budget process.
Right.
And the last thing I do as an assembly member, or the last main role, is working with constituents. So, if you have a problem or someone within the 22nd Assembly District has an issue, I'm there to advocate for them.
Okay.
Just recently, for example, a woman walked into my office. She had a problem with the insurance company. They sent her a huge bill, and there was a language barrier. Her husband passed away. She was frustrated, beyond frustrated. She came into the office. We sat down. We made phone calls. We talked to her. There was some back and forth, but we came with a resolution for her. And she's on a fixed income, so she was able to pay the reduced amount of bills with us helping her. That's just one example.
Right.
There's many more. We've helped over 1,000 constituents, and we love helping people. So working with constituents, I think, is one of my favorite aspects of the job.
Great. So, any issue that they can come to you, come to assembly, a member of assembly, and they can provide some help.
Well, I can't solve every issue.
Right, right.
People come with federal issues. I definitely have to refer it out to our,
But
U.S.
you
senators,
find a way,
Congress.
basically.
But I guide them.
You refer.
Yeah, I guide them. I'm always constantly updating them. I always want to make sure that I guide them in the right direction.
Right.
So if I personally cannot find a solution, or my staff cannot find a solution, we will be there to guide them through the process and see if we can come up with a resolution.
Right.
And so we're there to help them. And definitely, we give advice. We can't represent people. We're not a law firm.
Right.
But definitely we can guide them into the right direction.
Right. So let's talk about the laws that you have passed, and you have been involved in passing certain laws. You said that you were able to pass a couple of laws in the
Yes.
first year.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. What was that, and how did you do that?
So one issue that's very important to me
Right.
is childcare.
Okay.
If you look at recently, there was an article that came out that said New York has the most expensive child care in the nation. And so, being able to have access to child care is so important.
Okay.
It creates economic engines in our community. For instance, if a mother was not able to work, and nowadays, both parents have to work in order to live here on Long Island.
Yeah,
And so if a mother cannot work because she has to take care of her kids,
Right.
because childcare is too high, we're losing an economic engine in our community. And so access to affordable childcare will uplift families, uplift communities,
Okay.
and not just plain childcare, but quality childcare, where a child is really educated and uplifted. That's what I'm looking to do for our communities. And so I've helped pass childcare bills within the assembly.
Okay.
And I'm most proud of a child care law in which I passed. I would give access to child care to certain union members
Okay.
in New York State, CSCA, UTF. And so, that's one aspect of giving more child care to union members, but we need to expand it to all citizens of New York State. And so we also passed an initiative where New York City got, universal pre-K.
Right.
And that's great for New York City. It's a part of our state,
Right.
but now we have to expand it to outside of New York City. And so when a parent has access to pre-K, which is, a form of childcare, that family can be able to work.
Right.
or be able to, have other sort of modes of income. And so, working on that child care bill, access to child care, I also did another law in which I helped schools on Long Island tap into their reserves.
Oh.
As we know,
Yeah.
it's very expensive to run an educational
Right,
program.
right.
Non-general education spending has increased 200%. And when I talk about non-general education spending, I'm talking about pension costs, transportation, things that not are in the classroom, but outside the classroom.
Fixed cost.
Fixed costs, exactly.
Right, yeah.
And so, a school within the 22nd Assembly District was struggling. They couldn't increase property taxes because of the tax cap.
Right.
Their costs were increasing, and so they had a reserve that was it was like some reserve. It was a reserve that they had a surplus. So they had the money there to tap into, but technically they couldn't tap into. So I worked with our Senate colleague to actually get them pass a piece of legislation to tap into that reserve. And so that helped the taxpayers because it didn't increase taxes. We didn't have to go and vote on whether we're going to pierce the tax cap.
Right,
and
right,
it also
right,
helps stabilize their finances. And so tapping into that reserve was very important to that school. They didn't have to lay off teachers.
Right.
They didn't have to cut programs, and they actually were able to bring more books into the classroom. That's something that we need to do.
So reserve is basically it's their own money, right?
It's their own money,
I mean,
yeah.
Then why do they have to get a permission from someone?
So there's like certain laws that prohibits them
Right.
from tapping into certain reserves.
Uh-huh.
And so there's basically the comptroller didn't allow them, the comptroller of New York State, didn't allow them to tap into that reserve because it was for teacher services. It was like a reserve that it couldn't be tapped into for that purpose, for the purpose of not
the
laying
other
off
purpose,
teachers.
So reserve is basically it's like by law every year they have to set aside some money for different
Yes.
purposes.
Yes. So they set aside the money in different reserves.
Right.
And in this particular reserve, they actually had a surplus, so they couldn't even put any more money in.
Ah, okay.
So it was just sitting there. And it's great to have a reserve, but when you're in need of other funds,
Right.
then we had to go legislatively into and be able to tap in their reserve. And I think that reserve is still at the peak. But now they have the opportunity to really go in and preserve the quality of education. And this year we don't have to do that because it stabilizes their finances. And now this year we're also looking at the tax cap.
Right.
Which is an important piece of legislation for Long Island.
Right,
Because we
right,
all
right.
know that property taxes are high.
It's a huge issue.
It's a huge issue.
Right.
And so, this year we actually in the budget process, we gave homeowners property tax relief,
Right.
and we also gave families a tax credit.
Ah,
So if you know of anyone who didn't receive the property tax freeze or the tax credit, they can call our office for that state number.
Okay.
And New York State is a specific number that you can call
Okay.
that will tell you how to get access to those two pots of monies. So the family tax credit was $350.
Okay.
And the property tax freeze, which is implemented in Nassau County for year one, is also available, but it depends on certain requirements. And so I recommend if anyone hasn't received their property tax freeze check to call my office, or if you have an issue with it, because for instance, one person received $50. That's not right. And so we went and called the state, and then the person had some assistance.
Oh, so you're saying that every homeowner has a property freeze tax. They should be getting some money.
So if you paid taxes in 2012, property
Okay.
tax in 2012,
Okay.
you own your home,
Okay.
and like I said, pay taxes, and
Right.
you're in good standing, you should receive a check.
Oh, you should. Okay.
You should receive a check. But there's sometimes certain things that are wrong, like if you haven't applied for STAR, or if you haven't done certain initiatives in the state, or there could be clerical errors, you probably have not received a check.
Uh-huh.
So definitely call my office at that number that I mentioned before, and then you will be able to get access to a phone number with the Department of Finance and Taxation, and see if you can get access to that property tax freeze check.
People don't know about this thing.
Yeah, many people are not familiar with it.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Just go on your life, and you don't
And you don't.
you don't know this thing. You don't pay attention to this.
Exactly. In the state of New York, we allocated money for homeowners because we realize that property taxes is an issue.
Right.
In upstate New York and
Right.
in Long Island,
Right.
it's a huge issue.
Right.
And it's really driving a lot of our families out of
Right.
our state. And it's not something that we want to do. We want to retain people and actually bring more people back, correct?
Yeah, agreed.
And so, giving a little relief is a first step. And definitely next year, we're going to look about how we can give more relief to homeowners and to families as well, and to senior citizens too.
I think that's a good information actually.
Yeah.
People don't know about this thing.
People know.
So they definitely should find out about this. They may get some money.
Exactly. And there's also STAR, and many people had to reapply for STAR.
Okay.
Many people who moved here recently to Long Island or to New York State are not familiar with the STAR program.
Right.
And so that's another tax relief initiative
Right.
that I implore people to take part in. And also I implore everyone to grieve your taxes. Most people don't understand that term, where your house is not assessed in a correct way.
Right.
And you can grieve it, say that it's not right, file some paperwork. You don't have to pay a law firm or a company. You could do it yourself
Okay.
and be able to grieve your taxes and get a reduction.
Okay.
We've helped many homeowners get a grievance to their taxes, and that helps. Sometimes it's a little, sometimes it's a lot. But if you don't apply,
Then you don't get it.
you don't get it.
Simple.
Exactly. And I always believe the hush mouth doesn't get fed. So if we don't talk about our property taxes, and if we don't grieve our property taxes, if we don't apply for relief, then what are we doing? We're not telling that there's a problem.
Right. So you don't need to go to the lawyer for this then.
You don't need to go to a lawyer to grieve your taxes.
Right.
It's quite simple. And there's many facets of government that actually host these grievance workshops.
Right.
From, in my area, the Village of Valley Stream hosted the program. The town of Hempstead, Don Clavin, does an excellent job at teaching homeowners how to grieve their taxes. Also, Legislator Solage also hosts a program. And it's done at all times of the day, morning, noon, and night. So there's no excuse for you not to go to the program. And it teaches you how to grieve your taxes.
Okay.
And most people are wary because it's a legal action, but it's so easy. It's quite easy. And it's also on YouTube. Legislator Solage put it up on YouTube. So if you YouTube as well, you can find it. But I tell everyone to go to the classes because you can sit one-on-one with the individual and the assessment office and have a conversation about your particular property.
Great. I think this is also very good information. I mean, people don't know many times.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's talk about, this was very good information that you must grieve your taxes every year. And another step is, let's say the tax department doesn't agree with you, you can still have an option to go to a small claims court.
Exactly.
And which definitely is more effective also. So that's what we take it from that conversation, correct?
Exactly. And usually the judge has a sympathy towards homeowners who enter the court. And so it's always a process to go into court, but when you plead your case in front and you show that you're a serious homeowner and that property taxes are high and that you're struggling and that your house was assessed in the incorrect way, they usually plead with them.
Good.
But like I said, grieve your taxes, because if you don't grieve it, then you're missing out on an opportunity to get a reduction.
Right. And money is money, right?
Money is money, exactly. Especially nowadays in this great recession.
Yep.
Every dollar is important.
Okay, let's talk about the smart economic development. You mentioned that. Tell us what is that means and how do you go about it?
Economic development is something that in the state we really need to push on so many different levels.
Okay.
And especially here on Long Island, if we look, it's been very long, I would say 50 years since we attracted a business with more than 500 employees. And so the basis of Long Island is our small businesses, our businesses with 500 or less employees. And so we need to make sure that we foster economic development, make sure that, people who want to create jobs have access to capital, loans, and programs so they create these jobs. And we also need to look at different spaces on Long Island and see where we can foster economic development. Just the other day, I was actually in Israel, and I went to a mission to Israel, and I met with Google, which is one of the greatest tech companies you can have around after yours. and so Google had actually a floor dedicated to entrepreneurs. And so on this floor, individuals had access to computers, to technology and also to classes so that they can, increase, technology and teach other people how to access technology.
Right.
We need to do that more here on Long Island. We have startup companies, we have great tech companies, we have companies even devoted to giving space to startup companies.
Okay.
But we really need to focus on how we could bring economic development. One facet of economic development I love to talk about is Belmont Racetrack.
Okay.
Which is in the 22nd Assembly District.
Right.
And we all know Belmont Racetrack is one of the greatest racetracks, not only in the country, but around the world. It's the last leg of the Triple Crown, one of the three famous races.
Right.
Just the other day, in my community, we had about 100,000 people attend the Belmont Stakes with the horse.
That's a big
California Chrome. Yes.
Wow. Yes.
And even though California Chrome did not win, it really created just economic energy.
Right.
All the way from Garden City to Elmont,
Right.
where people entered into our community, spent dollars,
Right.
and enjoyed, what we have to offer here on Long Island.
Right. Right. Right.
And so I always implore the state of New York to look at Belmont Racetrack and figure out what we can do there, what we can do to attract business, what we can do to foster economic development, and what we can do to really, make people come here to Long Island. Just the other day, Queens was declared the destination of New York, the #1 destination. That's just right there. We can attract people to Long Island.
Right.
It's not too far or far-fetched idea.
Right.
And so Belmont Racetrack, which is at the gateway of Long Island, is a good way to foster economic development. But then also talking about all of Long Island, how we could bring more to Long Island, bring our fair share of state aid. And so, that's just one aspect of economic development. But I like talking about tech companies because that's the future.
Right.
If you look at, which business to go into, it's not anymore, being a doctor or lawyer. Sometimes you don't tell your kids that nowadays. Don't become a doctor or lawyer. You tell your kids to come into the startup companies, to tech companies.
Right.
Be able to code. That's
Right.
so important nowadays, and that's where all the money is. If you're looking for a career with a good salary and good benefits.
Right.
And so I'm telling the state of New York, let's do economic development here on Long Island. It's the perfect place. We have the land. We have the human capital
Yes.
here on Long Island.
Yeah.
And we also have just a great environment that fosters economic development.
No, I think it's a great idea because my daughter is in college and she is also in a computer science major. She always talks about startup companies.
Yes.
And she wants to start up, do a startup. And I think, as you said, that we do have all the ingredients. It's a matter of taking initiative and making it happen.
Exactly. And we're starting to do that in the state of New York. We're looking at different areas and different regions and looking at where we could foster economic development.
Right.
And everyone focuses on New York City.
Right.
But housing is very expensive there.
Right.
It's very expensive to live there. And so, if you move on to Long Island, which is, a great offshoot,
Right.
I think that we would be very successful. And so I'm pushing, Long Island initiatives. I support Long Island initiatives and economic development here on Long Island.
Well, that brings me to next question. You mentioned that $157 billion, state government spends.
Yes.
And out of that, obviously, there will be a fixed cost, salaries, this and that, whatever.
Yeah.
But there will be a huge economic opportunity for businesses on Long Island. Especially, I'm talking about, WMBE,
Yes.
women and minority-owned businesses.
Yeah.
Governor made an announcement. I was there in Albany a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, that now the share of WMBE, that the state wants to increase it from 20% to 30% goal. That's a huge number.
Yes.
And you are kind of, this is your real issue that you really want to work on it.
Yes.
Tell us about that. What it means to people.
What's great about the state of New York is our diversity.
Right.
Wherever you go, we have a diverse pool of human capital. And especially in our minority and women-owned businesses,
Right.
That's where our bread and butter is. Right. There was just recently said that women-owned businesses are actually increasing faster than any other facet of business. And so in the state of New York, we're tapping into that. The Governor Andrew Cuomo, actually increased the bar from 20% to 30% contracts with the states. And that's the highest in the nation.
Wow.
We're a leader in the MWBEs. And so we need to make sure that Long Island is getting their fair share of
Right.
MWBE contracts. And so people are saying, you know, what's MWBEs? What can they do for me?
Right.
And so MWBEs, or minority women-owned business enterprises, do everything for the state.
Right.
So they can, you know, contract and give paper clips all the way to actually doing projects, infrastructure projects, tech projects within New York State. And so I tell everyone, do you have a business? Are you contracted with the state? If not, get contracted. Because MWBEs is something that we're really going to focus on in the next term, so people can access to, you know, the state contracts. And we streamlined the program. You know, before it was very complicated to get certified with the state. Most people didn't know where to go to get certified with the state. But we streamlined that process. So certification is very easy. We also have a mentorship program for individuals who, you know, are certified and now have a contract. Because one of the biggest barriers were that when people had contracts, they didn't know what to do, you know, how to maintain the contracts. They didn't know, you know, where to get information from. And once they had the contracts, they actually sometimes lost the contracts because of lack of knowledge.
Right.
And so we fixed that problem in New York State. And, you know, we're doing much more to make sure that people have access to MWBE contracts, and also people have the roadways to be able to really, really foster that economic development within their communities.
And you are also actively participating or actively working on this issue of Long Island getting fair share of their WMBE dollars. And if I look at it, $157 billion, and let's say 80% goes in fixed costs, 20% is still $30 billion.
Exactly.
And out of $30 billion, 30% is huge money.
It's huge money.
It's a huge money.
It's huge money, and I definitely think that Long Island should get their fair share of MWBE monies.
Right.
You know, Long Island's changing. You know,
Right.
it used to be, you know, single-family homes, and people would, you know, it would be a bedroom community, so people would work in the city and then just come to Long Island to sleep.
Right.
No longer is that true. You know, now we're fostering businesses, and now we're actually building different companies, and so making sure that, you know, we have the knowledge disseminated to communities, and making sure that the money is actually coming to Long Island is essential. And so this legislative session, that's going to be one of my priorities. I'm looking forward to working with you as well to disseminate this information, which would be very important, and also, you know, drive and make sure that, you know, we have it here in our localities.
Starts with the certification, obviously, you know, WMBE certification by the Empire State Development Corporation. And I guess if anyone has any question or need assistance, they can call your office too.
They can call my office, and then I also implore them to go to the state website, the MWBE website, which you can search online through a search engine, New York State MWBEs. There's a vast scope of knowledge there. And any of your questions that you have will be answered there. So I definitely implore everyone to search the website, look to see if MWEs can be accessed through their company, and if they have any further questions, they can call me as well.
Our viewers are all from minority communities, obviously. They are all from South Asia. I'm sure you have experience with our community.
Yes.
Tell us about that now.
The South Asian community is actually a growing population and is thriving. From all the way from Montauk to Elmont, you know, your community is becoming so involved, and it's great because they're really bringing such a unique perspective that's never been in government before. And so just the other day, I was actually the mediator for the Black and Brown Caucus. The Black and Brown Caucus here on Long Island, we had a meeting talking about the South Asian community and the growing South Asian community, and how we can make sure that they get access to information. So I mentioned before I was Haitian American.
Right.
And you know, we're just growing socially and politically and economically. You know, we've been in the country for a very long time, but now we're getting political energy. And you know, the South Asian community, it has a social energy already. It definitely has the economic energy. Definitely has that. And now it's starting to gain the political energy needed. And so we want to make sure that all communities are connected, and make sure that we foster the South Asian community. And we're very excited to work with them. I mean, there's so many advocates I can name that in the background are doing such good work and making sure that people have just access to information, that they're advocating for communities, not only South Asian community, but all communities. And so I really am very excited to see more elected officials of South Asian descent coming and joining the force to make sure that all communities are represented here on Long Island, not just one or two, but all.
All communities, right. See, that's the purpose of this show, that to encourage people to participate in political process of this country, because as you said, that our community is socially and economically pretty well, and now the next level is the really political involvement.
Exactly.
And that's what we really want to get people involved in there. And you said from every community that we need to make a representation at the level, different level of the
every
government.
single level. And I know the town of Hempstead, we have a South Asian person elected, and now
Yes.
we need to get more people in different layers of government in the South Asian community involved. And it's so important because that's a large community. I've never realized until I was in that forum like how many different facets of the South Asian community are here on Long Island.
Are huge.
And imagine if they combine together and really started organizing. There's SATPAC, there's different organizations. There's a Pakistani organization that's run by this gentleman named Malik Ahmed, who runs in Nassau County, a Pakistani group. But all these groups are now combining together, and I think that's the important facet: unity.
Not easy.
It's
but
not
it's
easy.
important.
There's still places struggling with unity,
Exactly.
but it's so important that they unify.
Yes.
And then we
agreed.
all have small differences. I think every person, every group within a faction has their unique nuances.
Right.
But sometimes you gotta put that to the side.
Yeah.
And work together, and go for the goal. And it's possible, and I see the South Asian community doing so many great things politically in the future.
I agree with you. The only issue is, everyone is kind of, most of the people are successful people, right? So when you have too many successful people, the ego comes on the way, and everybody is doing good.
Yeah.
So obviously, it's, you got to get all together. That's
exactly.
That's
well, they say when you put two people in a room, you hear three different sides of a story.
There you go.
So but definitely, I think it takes time to politically get involved.
Right.
And, many of those professionals you speak of are going to hit retirement soon.
Yeah,
So I definitely think they'll have more time on their hands.
You are right.
And so definitely, I think the South Asian community is going to do a lot of great things.
Yes.
And I like the diversity in the South Asian community. There's so many different aspects of the South Asian community, but when they're unified, they do some great things.
It's amazing that we have a South Asian at the top governor's level in two different states, like in South Carolina and Louisiana, and New York being so diverse. We don't have representation yet, but as you said that the time will definitely it'll happen. It's bound to happen.
It's bound to happen.
It's bound to happen.
Like I said, it took so long for a Haitian representative to really get elected.
Right.
And that's a small group, Haitian Americans within the Caribbean community.
Right.
So, it takes time to get political power.
I agree.
And like I said before, sometimes, nuances get in the way.
Right.
But, I don't see that anymore with the South Asian community. Good. I've seen so many good things happen on Long Island with the South Asian community. Right. Just the other day, I was at an anti-domestic violence walk. With the South Asian community, different aspects of the South Asian community getting together, talking against domestic violence, and not just in their community, but all over in this country, and that's very important to see that unification.
Right. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate your time, your wisdom and your good knowledge that you provided us today.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, really.
It's my pleasure.
It's really
thank you for this opportunity. Yeah. It's really great to share a moment with your viewers.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you have any questions, comments, you can email me at rajmitv@gmail.com. That's again rajmitv@gmail.com. You can watch our prior shows on YouTube at youtube.com/Infosys International. Again, that's youtube.com/Infosys International. Until next time, have a great week. Thank you.
Thank you.